Welcome back, everyone. This is Frank Demora, and it's been some time since I gave you some information connecting the dots about what platform would be available to give rise to the Antichrist. And I'm pretty sure that you're going to find this information pretty interesting. So let me go right into it. I want to read something to you first, and I'm going to be making all the connections, obviously, to you. But what I'm getting at is from the book of Daniel in chapter 2. Now, Daniel chapter 2 is where God showed Daniel every one of the major world empires that would come into existence. They would rule the planet, rule the earth during their time of reign. And at the time that Daniel was living, during the reign of Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar, this is when God had showed him all the kingdoms up until the very time that Jesus Christ would return. So we know that Babylon was existing when Daniel wrote it, and then the Medo-Persian Empire, God showed him that would overtake Babylon, and that happened. And then the Grecian Empire under Alexander the Great would defeat the Medo-Persian Empire. That happened. We also know that from the scriptures, Greece was going to be divided into 4 sections. And if you read your history, you'll see that under Alexander the Great, who died at a young age, his kingdom was separated into 4 divisions. And that part of the prophecy was fulfilled as well. And then, of course, Rome would defeat the Grecian Empire, which it did. And we see the western and the eastern leg of the old Roman Empire. According to what we know from Daniel, in the last days, the Roman Empire would relive again, would be revived. And at the end result, this kingdom would end up with 10 kings. Now, in the book of Daniel, we see these symbolistic symbols of the toes, the 10 toes, on the figure of which Daniel saw. And these represent 10 kings, 10 kingdoms that are headed by the kings. These kings are going to give all their power over to the Antichrist. He will rule the earth. And this is the man that Jesus Christ, when he comes back at the end of the tribulation, at the end of the 7-year tribulation, that he's going to defeat this Antichrist man, who is actually incarnate of Satan in a form of a man. So what I've been showing you is how the decline of America and what's going on with the global economy to give a platform to the Antichrist rising. Now bear with me, I want to read you something here. It says this. Now in the book of Daniel, the Lord gives us a look at every world empire from Daniel to the return of Jesus Christ. And nowhere in the book of Daniel, or for that matter, in any other book found in the Bible, does it say anything about America being a world empire during the last days. Now, the lack of information, however, can show us a great deal. For example, ask yourself this question. Believe me, I ask myself this question quite often. The United States is supposed to be the strongest nation on planet Earth. So why did the Lord leave out any trace of America concerning the last days? Could it be that the U.S. during the last days would fall away from power to the point that she would not play any major role? And this is obviously, I'm going to get somebody saying that that's a rule, but forgive the spelling error. It's supposed to major role as the world superpower in the last days. And I think this could be the case. Now, in many of my previous posts, I have been showing you how America is declining in power. I wanted you to watch the news because you will see hundreds of thousands of Americans lose their jobs each month as America's power in the world keeps declining. And I have shown you time and time again, when the president comes up with the good news about job increases, the real news concerning the jobs will be adjusted soon after, and it won't be good news. Here is a case in point. Watch the video below and see how many jobs the Obama administration is calling good news. Then read the newest report showing how many people just filed for unemployment benefits. Now, get this, because this is what I wrote to you back in April of 2012, April 12th of 2012. And so I'm hoping that the people that were reading posts, and this isn't the only post that I put this kind of information in, because after that information, I give you all kinds of statistics that's going down, showing us that America is declining. And if you want to read that post, just go to this link right there, and you'll be able to read that post. But now I'm going to bring you, I'm going to tie in what I warned you back in April, because I want to bring you up to date right here. Now, this is the newest headline. Let me go right to that headline for you so that you see. This is obviously today, August the 30th. Jobless claims hold flat. Spending tops income gains. Now look at this. The number of Americans filing new claims for jobless benefit was unchanged last week, pointing to a labor market that was treading water. Initial claims for state unemployment benefits were a seasonally adjusted 374,000, the Labor Department said on Thursday. The prior week's figure was revived up to show 2,000 more. Remember what I said back in April 12th? I said every time that they tell you the statistics, the real statistics will come out. Again, the scenario, it keeps going on and on and on with the same kind of changing of the figures. Now, it says in a separate report, consumer spending rose 0.4% in July, the best showing in 5 months, and ahead of the 0.3% income gain. Now, economists polled by Rutgers had forecast claims dipping to 370,000 last week, the 4-week moving average for the new claims. A better measure of the labor market trends rose 1,500 to 370,250. Now, the jobless claims has risen 10,000 in August, suggesting some modification in the place of job growth this month after payrolls increased 160,000 in July from 64 in June. So what we have here is we have 374,000 people filing for benefits. This is America. And we haven't seen anything like this since the first Depression. And of course, in my book back and in my live presentations, as far as back as 1977, when the Lord put me in the ministry, I was telling the people what was going to happen in America, and everything that I said has already come to pass, except the actual collapse. We're on the verge of that taking place now, but it just won't be America who will be collapsing. It's going to be a worldwide collapse. And you'll see some more information that I'm going to bring up to you. Now, the second report that I want to show you here is by Bloomberg, and this was today. The foreclosure sales fell sharply in the second quarter. Now, sales of bank-owned homes and those already on the foreclosure path fell sharply in the second quarter, reflecting a thinner slate of properties sale in many cities, and banks take a measured approach to placing homes on the market. Even so, foreclosure sales share of all U.S. home purchases grew in the April to June period, foreclosure listing firm Realty Track Inc. said Thursday. Now, most people, let me get back to my site here, most people would consider, wow, that's a little bit of good news, but it really isn't very good news, because what's happening is you have people that haven't been buying the homes. You have a glut of homes on the market now. And so the price of the market, the homes in the market, has been dropping, and now you have problems with people not being able to being funded by the banks because of what happened in 2008 and the debacle there with the home foreclosures. Now it's really difficult for people to find loans. So the problem does persist. Now, here is a picture of the domino effect going down, and you'll see this in my posts, and I showed you what was going to happen, and of course that actually did happen. The global housing bubble collapsed, massive foreclosures right off, the global recession. It started in the United States, and we've been having major birth pains ever since. Foreclosures rise, investors skyrocket, house prices fall. We saw that happen. Inflation rises, interest rates rise, housing sales fall, ARMs reset higher. Exactly what happened. Liquidity markets crash, social turmoil as budgets get slashed. Now, we saw all kinds of social turmoil taking place in the European Union and also in the Arab nations. The housing price is down 20 to 40%. That happened too. Now they're just now starting to inch upward. But when you take a look at who's buying a house, you'll see that the investors are buying homes. Now, where I live in California, in this small area that I'm living in, the investors, realtors, are buying up these houses who've been in foreclosure, and we have a glut of houses for rent. And one of the reasons why there is a glut for rent is because we've had so many people lose their jobs. I believe in the area that I live into, the unemployment rate is like 16%. And so we're seeing this domino effect taking place, not just in my hometown, but if you do a search, you'll see that it's happened across the board in the United States. Now, here's another article that I brought up for you, August the 30th, 2012. You know, when you're talking about home foreclosures, I want you to take a look at this. This is part of the article that I put up for you. It says, as of last month, there were 1.47 million U.S. homes in some stage of the foreclosure process or owned by banks. Of the 620,551 in lenders' possession, only about 15% are listed for sale according to the Realtor Trek. Now, why is that? Well, it's because nobody has the money to buy them, except for the rich people who can afford to go out and make an investment and buy up these properties. But there are a lot of homes that are being ready to be dumped on the market. And of course, if you dumped them all on the market at the same time, this would be bad news for the economy. And so they're holding these properties. Now, here's another one. It says, is the U.S. headed for a double dip recession? Now, when you go back to my little photo here, we talk about all the different things, and you'll see trading partners enter recession. So that too is one of the major worries that are going down. Now, I want to show you the article here. I'll go right to it for you. You'll see it here. It says, in addition to a host of warnings, last Wednesday's Congressional Budget Office report did contain a little bit of good news. Now, the economy will grow slightly faster in the second half of 2012 than in the first half, and inflation will stay extremely low according to the projections in the CBO's update to the budget and economic outlook. The bad news is that unemployment will probably remain above 8%. Now, let me just tell you this. Probably, you got to be kidding me. I mean, I wish people would tell the truth, because when you have this much unemployment and people are still looking for jobs, as a matter of fact, you heard it yourself on the news, people have been out of work for so long they stopped looking for jobs. So when they're talking about will probably remain, you know, let me revise that and say unemployment will remain above 8%. It'll be a miracle if it goes down, and I'm for one that would love to see it go down, but it doesn't look that that's what's going to happen. Now, the worst news is that next year the U.S. faces continued high unemployment. Hello, you're getting it right now. You're hopefully, you're seeing the handwriting on the wall. Below average growth and the risk of a double dip recession. And I showed you in the dominoes that was one of the effects of what was going to take place in the future. Now, the U.S. economy never built up much of a head steam coming out of the 2007-2009 recession, which saw the biggest drop in real GDP since the 1940s and the highest unemployment since the early 1980s. And it's still, as you saw the news today, over 370,000 people losing their jobs. And this is continuing every month. Now here's another one. Check this out. It says the next year, the global economy situation figures to be even less hospitable to growth, which will make it harder for the U.S. economy to speed up for its current disappointing pace. And at the rate the United States is going, they're definitely on their way of losing their superpower status. And believe me, when you see these lines in every city around the world just about, you get a clear picture what's really going on in the world. So let me continue to go down here. Here's another one of the articles pointing to now Great Britain, because it's not just America's problem, it's the world's problem. We're so tied in now as a world community. What happens to one nation affects the other nations. Now let me go right to the article here. You'll see this. It says the British GDP figures to confirm worst double dip recession in 50 years. Again, going back to those dominoes that I showed you back last year. This is the kind of news that you need to understand, that it's going to bring out a platform for a new world leader, and that's the one that Jesus talked about that will emerge when the 10 toes give all their power over to this man, the Antichrist. It says Britain's longest double dip recession for more than 50 years will be confirmed in official figures out on Wednesday. Now, the gross domestic product, the GDP, a broad measure for the total economy, is forecast to have shrunk by around 0.2% between April and June, in its third straight quarter of contraction. That would mark the longest double-dip recession since quarterly records began in 1955 and is believed to be the worst since the Second World War. You see, these are the birth pangs of bringing in new leadership of the last days. Now, let me give you a heads up. I just want to show you what they're talking about. In my book, I talk to you about listening to the news, because you're going to hear more news about recession and depression. All right? So just keep that in mind when you listen to this.
Hi, I'm Mr. Do-It-All. As the IT guy from my
Sorry about that. We're going to have a little commercial here first.
Month's payroll because of a hard drive crash. Fortunately, I have a little help. It's called Mozy Pro. Mozy Pro automatically backs up emails, spreadsheets, presentations, and other business files. I don't even have to think about it. Mozy Pro also has mobile apps that let you access your data from any iPhone, iPad, Android phone, or tablet. To protect your business, visit mozypro.com. Hey, lunchtime, which means someone's getting an email virus. That's mozypro.com, and I gotta go.
Let's bring in our financial contributor, Melody Hobson, president of Ariel Investments, also the chief economist of Moody's Analytics, Mark Zandi. Welcome to you both. And Mark, let me begin with you. We saw President Obama and Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke yesterday say the economy is strengthening, but many others disagree. They fear a double-dip recession. Paul Krugman even says we're in the early stages of a depression. What's your view?
Now, see right there, early stage of depression. My warnings are coming to pass. Now, please listen to this. You can't trust what these people are telling you, because the figures change almost immediately after they come out. And what they're painting is a picture of a rouge. It's not real.
I don't
don't think we'll experience a double dip or recession. I think the economy will make it through. It's going to be a bit tricky. We're going to feel uncomfortable, I think, over the next 6-12 months because, as the reporter said, the benefit of the stimulus is fading, but I think there's enough good going on that we'll make it through without a recession.
The big issue, of course, jobs. Biana talked about this wide range of estimates of what could happen. What's your best guess?
I think it'll fall 100,000, largely because of the loss of temporary...
Yeah, you get that? He thought that it was going to fall 100,000. But we've already seen it here, that the new figures came out with over 370,000 people.
Census jobs. If you strip that out, I think private sector job creation will be about 100,000 plus 100,000. So that's what we've been getting.
Yeah, and they're all working for McDonald's.
Since the beginning of the year, I think that's what we got in June.
But Melody, one of the things we've already seen is that the recession is much worse than we even feared. I was struck by this new study by Pew Research.
Thank you, George, for telling the truth here.
Research this morning saying that more than half of adults have been hit either with unemployment, fewer hours at work, or pay cuts, and that causes consumers to pull back.
Oh,
there's no question about that. The consumer is scared right now, and they've definitely shown that in terms of the retail numbers that we've seen. But the other side of it is that the more difficult the period, the tougher the recession, generally the stronger the recovery. And
that's history, but we're not necessarily seeing that this time yet.
Well,
right?
we certainly saw that when you look at last year, 2009, and you saw that specifically with the stock market. The stock market tends to anticipate an economic recovery, and that's what we saw in 2009. Right now, we've seen this weakness begin again in April, and that weakness has suggested that maybe the wheels are coming off. I agree with our other expert. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think we're going to see a double dip. Everyone's talking about a double dip, and no one has actually even declared the other recession over.
So what's your best advice now for how consumers and investors should weather the...
I hope you got that. Nobody's declared that the first recession was over. That's because we're still in it, and it's getting worse.
Storm.
The best thing you could possibly do is ignore the noise, really to tune out the volatility, to have an asset allocation that represents your risk tolerance and your time horizon, and stick to it. But let's just say you can't handle it. You're in a panic, you can't sleep, there are knots in your stomach. In that situation, lighten up your equity investments, your stock investments, 10 to 20%.
And Mark, how about what government should do right now? You see a lot of concern out there that governments around the world may be repeating the mistakes of the Depression, cutting back on spending, raising taxes before we're out, before we're in a full recovery.
Yeah, I think it would be premature for the government to step out quickly here. I mean, the economy is still struggling. So I think it would be prudent to...
All right, enough of that, because you only can take so much of information that is leading people in the other direction of what we see really coming. Now, here is another article that I want to show you. The headline, Stock Market, World Economy Headed for Crash, Some Experts Say. Let me go right to that article. There you go. It says, although news regarding the economy has been somewhat cautiously hopeful in recent months, most people haven't even really begun to shake off the pale of the few years of economic turmoil and relatively sucky overall decade. But in some experts, if some experts on the economy are correct, the worst is ahead of us when it comes to stock market and general economic pain. The dissolution of the housing bubble was only one of the things that caused the spiral of financial woe both in the U.S. and outside it. And one expert says that the worst after effects of bad debt are still to come. And this is exactly what I've been warning about. I mean, they're saying exactly the same thing that I told you was going to be coming. U.S. Today quotes Harry Dent, who authored a book of the very subject entitled The Great Crash Ahead. Dent has pushed his predictions back, but says that the stock market is in for a rough ride after 2012. Now, Dent has pulled back on his earlier prediction of the crash in 2012 as central banks around the world have been flooding markets with money, giving stocks an artificial short-term boost. But A crash is coming in 2013 or 2014, he warns. This will be a repeat of the 2008 and 9, only bigger when it finally hits, Dent told USA Today. And of course, if you look at Trend Center Gerald Celente, Gerald Celente is, he is one of the most adamant people talking about a depression coming in the United States. All you have to do is Google Gerald Celente. I think in 30 years, he missed the mark one time in 30 years. And he is one of these people talking about this major correction coming, or depression coming in the near future. So there are all kinds of signs in the news. Now here's another one. Here's a headline that says this: beware a return of the Great Panic of 2008. Head of the bank warns Europe is heading for danger zone as the world markets suffer the bleakest day of the year so far. Now this has to do, this article, I'm not going to go there for time-wise sake, but this is an article that deals with the European Union. We see the UK is in trouble. They're in massive debt like most of the nations within the European Union. And so, as I said before, we have a basket of nations now that are linked together, and one goes down, it's going to pull the others with it. Now, the head of the bank, the World Bank, yesterday warned that the financial market face a return of the Great Panic of 2008 on the bleakest day of the global economy this year. Robert Zulik said the crisis-torn Europe was heading for the danger zone, and I've been warning this for years now, and they're finally coming up. See these events coming up. Mr. Zulik, who stands down at the end of the month after 5 years in charge of the watchdog, said it was far and clear from the Eurozone leaders have steeled themselves for a looming catastrophe amid fears that Greek exit from the single currency and the meltdown in Spain. So if you've been watching the news, and if you've been watching the independent nations within the European Union, which, by the way, is the revived Roman Empire, the Western leg, these are the same nations that used to be in the old Roman Empire. Now they're having problems. When you read the book of Daniel in chapter 2, you'll see that the Lord had also told us that the nations, these nations, would not hold together. They wouldn't cleave. They'd be like clay and iron. They don't mix. So what we see here is taking place within the European Union. Now here's another one. Headline: Spain in wait-and-see mode as the recession worsens. Now, this is again the birth pangs, not just the United States. It's not just the Greek. You're seeing Italy, Portugal. France is in problems now, and they just got a new president in France. It says Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy on Tuesday, again this is the 28th of August, said that the government has not yet taken a decision on asking for the European help in refinancing its debt, pending a key meeting of the European Central Bank next week. And speaking alongside the EU Council Chief Herman Van Rompuy, who interrupted his vacation in Spain to meet the Prime Minister. All right, so they're having a lot of problems, and you go to this link right here, read the whole story, you'll get the full gist of what's taking place in Spain. It's major problems. And people are walking around thinking, oh, everything is going to keep going the way it is. It'll be okay. People, it is not going to be okay. Things are going to drastically change. We know that. We know that straight out from what Daniel shows us. There's a new kingdom coming. And this kingdom is going to be given to the Antichrist. Now take a look at this. A couple days ago, I put this up for you. For those that have missed it, it says this. Headline: Market crash could hit within weeks, warned banks. Now down here, it talks about when they think that this is going to happen. And if you notice here, they point out in September or October. This is what they're looking for. Now, in many of my posts, I show you why it's important to be watching what's going on in September, because during September is the Feast of Trumpets. And we know that the Lord will be picking up where he left off to fulfill prophecy on those very days. And it's very likely that the rapture of the church will begin or be taken place during the Feast of Trumpets. Now, nobody can tell you what year, and obviously I'm never going to set any dates, but the Lord showed us that all of the feasts were fulfilled on the very day of its first coming, so it really looks as though the Lord will again pick up from where he left off, and prophecy will begin to be fulfilled during the month of September, and it could be the rapture of the church. Notice what I said. It could be. I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure, but many of us believe that that's exactly what the Lord has shown us. And specifically when Paul said, of the times and the seasons, brethren, I don't need to write to you, for you'll know. And we know by what's going on in prophecy, especially when the Lord said, when you shall see all of these things, you'll know. Look up, because your redemption draws nigh. And so he was not talking about the months of the year when he said of the times and the seasons. He was talking about the Jewish festivals, those holidays that prophecy was being fulfilled on. So September is a very interesting month. And when I heard that they're talking about maybe a major correction taking place in September, that sent up the red flag. Now get this, because we're dealing with major shocks in the marketplace. It says 3 unusual reasons September could be the treacherous month for stocks. Now, the article is a little bit longer. I'm not going to go there. I'll let you read it. But again, it's pointing to the month of September. And when I see this, most of the people know that the red flag really means pay attention to what's going on. Now, one of the major nations that have been holding the world together has been China. And China now is confronting with some major problems of their own. And you'll see here their products are being stockpiled. Let me go to the article real quick for you, and you'll see why. It says, after 3 decades of torrid growth, China is encountering an unfamiliar problem with its newly struggling economy. A huge buildup of unsold goods that is cluttering shop floors, clogging car dealerships, and filling factory warehouses. Now, the glut, everything from steel and household appliances to cars and apartments, to hampering China's efforts to emerge from a sharp economic slowdown. It has also produced a series of price wars, and it has led manufacturers to redouble efforts to export what they cannot sell at home. All right? The severity of China's inventory overhang has been carefully masked by the blocking or adjusting of economic data. Sounds just like what the United States is doing. They're not telling you the truth. So they adjust the economic data by the Chinese government, all part of an effort to prop up confidence in the economy among business managers and investors. Now, this is exactly what the United States is doing. The people are getting savvy to what's going on, and they know what the real truth is. We're hurting. Major, major birth pangs. Now, let me go back to my site here for a second. And one of the reasons why you'll see this massive buildup and why all these products are hanging around is because people are not spending money. They're afraid. They're concerned. They don't want to do anything until they know they're going to have a job or they're going to get a raise, which doesn't look like is going to happen anytime soon. And so when China has problems, you're going to have major problems around the world, because China is one of those nations who've been funding money to prop up the rest of the world. And when you see news like this, it shows us that China soon will not be able to keep sending out money to prop everybody else up when they're ready to fall apart as well. So now let's take a look at, let me go right here, and you'll see that this is the world debt clock. This is reality, all right? This is the nations of the world. You'll see it right here. And this debt clock is massive, and it's continuing to climb. All right? So take a look at reality, and take a look at what's going on with the world marketplace, because the world marketplace is being set up, and here's the United States debt clock. We're moving towards a $16 trillion debt. It will never be paid off. Listen to me. It will never be paid off. You cannot have policies that just go out and print money thinking that you're going to pay off debt by printing money. It just isn't going to happen. And what we're seeing here is the legs and the direction that are bringing to the fruition, getting ready to set up the kingdom for this Antichrist man to come. Now, what are the things that could cause it? Well, we could see a crash of the United States. The economy goes down. Everybody else is affected. It brings everybody else with it. We might even see the crash begin as war breaks out. It could even happen war against Iran. We could see a major problem. Just think about this. What if, now get this, what if September the Lord decided to come back to rapture the church? Do you know how much chaos the world would go through economically when you had millions and millions of people and probably leaders, Christian leaders, who would be raptured out of the way? It would automatically throw the world into chaos. And of course, somebody would have to pick up the pieces, and guess who would step on the scene? Antichrist man. So you could have war, the rapture, market crash, or you may have all of them at the same time. All we know is this. The Lord showed us who was going to be the last world empire. And the Lord said, when you see this legs and you see the feet, the toes coming into fruition, you're going to know I'm about ready to come back. Now, we do know that the Antichrist is not here yet. But we do know, because the economy is ready to tank, he's coming up very, very shortly. So you need to be paying attention, and you need to get your ducks in a row. And when I mean getting your ducks in a row, I'm talking about accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior. Don't wait to be tanked in a ship that's going underneath. But instead, you can have the life preserver in the boat, and that life preserver for you in these days is Jesus Christ. When you put on the life jacket that says the Lamb of God, and I've received the Lamb of God, I've received Jesus as my personal Savior, no matter how deep that water is, you will always be afloat, because the Lord will reach down and remove you from any cold water, any cold torment, or for that matter, anything that will be taking place on this planet during the reign of the Antichrist. Now, if you don't believe it, all I can say is stay on board the boat you think that is going to just stay afloat, and watch and see what's going to happen. And I will keep posting you more economic news in the near future. And I can assure you this, no time soon are these figures going to come down to zero or anywhere near it. If you think that that's the case, you really need a new pair of glasses to see what is going on. And I'm hoping that the Holy Spirit has shown you today that we are moving very, very close to the final stage of the vision that God gave Daniel. Thank you.